Well, hi there, it's me, Penny. Welcome back to my practice room for this tutorial devoted to the Little Prelude in F major, BWV 927, music by J.S. Bach. And this is from the Little Keyboard Notebook for Bach's son, Wilhelm Friedemann Bach. Wonderful piece. And as you saw in the thumbnail, there is the need, I find, personally speaking, to deploy very effective tosses of the hand, as opposed to slapping the keys by throwing from the elbows. So as I sometimes do, and I recommend you as well, get a Post-it note, stick it on your piano, and write the words toss, not slap, right? Why is this important? For my ears, because I want to avoid this kind of playing. Now you may say, well, gee, I wish I could do that. I can't even get my hands together. I'm not at that stage yet. Well, okay, I grant you that. The hands were together, the rhythm was secure, the pulse was steady. But beyond that, there wasn't much. It was very notey, very kind of machine-like, no expression, no sense of direction. The notes were just like little soldiers marching onward. So now let me hopefully demonstrate those same 4 bars with a little bit more shape as that is a result of having practiced a lot trying to get a good toss of the hand. Among other things, of course, singing and whatnot, but that toss of the hand, okay? So, same spot. Yeah, that was better. That was better. I'm still practicing the piece because, as I say, I want to perform it for you soon. And some people ask, well, why don't you just put the performance and the tutorial together in one video? And oh, if they only knew the behind the scenes. I like really intense performances, and it's a totally different mindset than being in teacher mode. So, but that's the general gist of what I'm working for. Now, you may have seen a few weeks ago I put out a short eliminating the middleman, I think I called it, in this piece. And I'll put on the screen again for you the little reduction that I did. Basically just removing most of the 16th notes and looking for movement by step as a way to kind of give the ears some structural notes to latch onto. So you can play through that and sing some of those notes in conjunction with some of these exercises now that I want to show you for more technical piano-related things. And that toss of the hand is one of them. Now, when I began working on this piece a few months ago, my initial feeling was that I was going to anchor my left hand towards the thumb, which will give me something like this. Where I was hearing a lot of the thumb and third finger. I thought, that's going to be more interesting to the ear, more interesting than all those Fs over and over again. And yes, I did battle with struggling to get the hands in sync. And speaking of in sync, the best analogy I could come up for, because we all have that problem in this piece, right? getting it nice and tight, hands together. It's like these beaters from the mixing machine, right? You got your right hand, your left hand, and sometimes it just the pieces we play, we feel all klutzy and clumsy, right? And we want them to be all nice, intertwining as these beaters should, right? So I had some problems with that. The toss of the hand was critical in helping with that, but also what was helpful was reversing the tilt of my hand more to the fifth finger, to the edge, the outer side of the hand, so that I could listen for the tonic note. This piece is in F major. F is our tonic, and we have, through those first 4 bars, there's a tonic pedal tone. That F is almost always sounding, with the exception of the beginning of measure 4. So I thought I'd try that a couple months ago, and then I realized, voila, I'm onto something. This feels better, and my ear has something to, like an anchor to listen to like ground beneath the feet. So, this, I'm tilting my left hand slightly to the right, slightly away from the body. I don't often do this, but in this case, it worked for the first 4 bars, or even the first couple bars, really, when the left hand has got those 8th notes. And I'm using a little bit more of the side of that 5th finger than I normally would. Normally we use the pad of the finger, but by tilting my hand this way instead of playing like that, I was able to bring out and hear and feel more stabilized with that tonic F. So, if I sing that F, la, la, I really struggled with those 2 bars, I'll tell you. And that's not even putting it hands together. Gosh. So you might try that. Just the ear, you may find that you need to hear, or that your ear wants to hear that tonic. And so allow it to hear it by moving your hand however you need to move in order to hear it. And then combined with the toss of the hand, that will hopefully secure your left hand. Now that toss of the hand, which, as I said, again, is not like just willy-nilly loose spaghetti hand, but a controlled yet loose toss. When you're practicing that, and it can even be away from your piano when you're just sitting at the table or on the bus or whatever, be sure that you're doing it in rhythm, with a pulse, and that it's not just toss, toss, one more toss, that's good enough. But toss in the tempo that you're practicing. 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4, right? And that when you're on the front of a beat, the beginning of a beat, that's your landing, right? And the wrist, now these things are very hard to explain. As best as I can explain it, the wrist initiates the lift and the hand follows, and then the wrist initiates the descent and the hand follows. So the wrist and hand are doing a little bit of like a letter S on its side, or a slithering snake kind of thing, all the while the upper arm being loose and relaxed. So that's what I found helpful. Now, in terms of getting, because really this is the first 2 bars, first 3 bars that are the hardest of the piece. 4 bars, I'll grant you that. This isn't even getting it hands together. We need to talk about that. The right hand has that rest on the downbeat, and then the left hand has a rest in the middle of the bar, and then a rest in the downbeat of the next bar, and more rests in measure 3 in the right hand. It's like it's the egg beater thing, or it's also like when you're trying to when you're at the department store, the old-fashioned department store with the escalators, and you're at the top, you want to go downstairs, and my mom and I have this issue. We get uncomfortable going down the escalator. We have to kind of like plan for it. And if there are other people going by, we say, "Oh, go ahead. I need a moment." It's kind of funny. Like, you got to kind of, some things you got to like plan which foot goes first and when do I step, right? It's a little bit like this, getting on the escalator. Woo! Once you're on, hopefully you're good to go, but getting on is sometimes a problem. So what I found to be helpful here was to just place temporarily the rest off to the side and put a note in its place. So instead of resting the right hand on the downbeat, just play a note on the downbeat, any note. I'm going to play the C that the right hand will come in with anyway. So instead of playing it as written with the rest, I'm doing this. This kind of thing. And you only need to do this if you're really having some trouble getting the hands together. I practiced that way myself. So if I had some of those problems, chances are maybe some of you will be having them as well. All of this I share with you, assuming that you've had at least some weeks, some amount of time, hopefully a few weeks, working hands separately on the piece. It's always best to avoid diving in, trying to play it hands together. And as this is late intermediate, it'd probably be a good idea to have had at least a few years' worth of lessons under your belt. But that said, if you've done your hands separate work slowly with lots of counting, and you're trying to get it hands together, then try this removing of the rest. Right? Because this piece is fairly chordal, right? That's mostly what it is blocked chords, which then repeats with the hands switched. The left hand has the 16ths, right hand has the 8ths. And then some sequential material throughout measure 5, 6, as well, measure 9 through 10. But all of that, it's all right. So if you're feeling overwhelmed by the sheer quantity of 16th notes, just look at them as the triads for what that they are. That's all they are. Yeah, so that was a trouble spot. Also, too, this piece, it's really critical to do a lot of counting out loud. I've been doing the toss of the hand, and you noticed I was I explained about the drop of the wrist on the front of the beat and then coming out on the end of the beat. I also do a lot of rocking front and back on my sitting bones, and I tried to move the camera far enough back so you could see some of my leg. I'm sitting on just the front third or so of the bench. If you're sitting too much on the bench, then it limits your then your quad muscles, your big leg muscles are less mobile. So if you sit on the front third, then you can rock on your sitting bones, keeping both feet, and this is a general tip for playing quote-unquote classical music, keep both feet on the pedals, even if you're not using them, and your legs close together, not like clenching them or anything, but save the, stomping with your legs far apart. Save that for your, great balls of fire kind of rock and roll piano. If you're playing Bach and Chopin and Beethoven, that kind of thing, have your feet on the pedals and your legs close together. Joseph Hoffman talked about this in his wonderful book. That it gives you mobility. And this rocking on the sitting bones, I do various gradations of it based on how the passage work is arranged. For this one, I'm generally doing front, back per every 2 beats. So this piece is in common time. We got 4 beats per bar. 2, 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and front and back, and front and back. Just at a slow tempo. That's the nuts and bolts of what I'm doing in terms of my motion. There is also some a little bit of rotation, I suppose, well, there is. But the rocking, I really want to stress that. That for me is very helpful. And well, I do tend to take some criticism every now and then from viewers for how I move at the piano. And frankly, I was never told these things before I started making videos. And much of the time, it can be quite upsetting actually to hear some people's feedback about my movements, and that it's distracting and annoying and looks terrible and it's embarrassing and unnecessary and all of these things. And uh, but I'm not, like, I'm hearing the music and I'm pleased with what I'm hearing, and I cannot get what I'm hearing unless I move in a certain way. And so it all relates to the beat and the meter, the strong and the weak parts of the beats, the side of the hand that's being used. As I say here, in the left hand opening, I want my fifth finger more supported, so I'm anchoring that way, which will conversely mean that I'll have to lean in a little bit more, perhaps, just because the fifth fingers are short and they're on the outside of the hand, so they need a little extra help to get good traction on the keys. But it all comes from a desire to communicate something through the music. And sometimes I really got to pick up the pieces and put myself back together after I get some of this feedback. It's a challenge sometimes. But I'm playing in a way that feels good to me, and most importantly, that I'm pleased by, that the sound pleases me, right? So these are some things, counting out loud, rocking, tossing of the hand. One particular trouble spot is the left hand in measure 4, middle of measure 4. Here as I say, you'll see an overhead with my fingering. I'm doing 1, 2, 4, 1, 1, 2, 4, 1, and then 2, 4, 5, 1, 2, 4, 5, 1, going to 5 on the low note. This is one of the hardest passages in the piece, and it's best to break it up into little chunks, maybe four or 5 notes. That begins on beat 3, that particular spot, which is a strong beat. So I'm rocking forward there, front, back. And for me, it just helps me to sort of ride the meter, ride the rhythm, if you will. So try that, and you can also work on the back end of that. Each of these little 4 or 5 note gestures, I'm not only rocking front and back in conjunction with the strong or the weak beats and tossing my hand, but I'm also approaching from above. As opposed to playing it from a stationary position, which is just, I find, never an effective way to play, especially in passage work, because it kind of restricts your motions and stiffens things up. And Leschetizky used to talk about pianists being like a horse rider, a jockey, like a moving, it's just like a sport, right? So if we get too comfy and just playing on the key with very little motion except from the fingers, maybe the airplane doesn't quite get off the runway. The other thing with this piece, because it's so chordal, and you could, as I say, block much of it, but the problem is that the fifth finger has an awful lot of responsibility in both hands, but especially the right hand here. And the double-edged sword is that we have this challenge of the right hand, for the majority of the piece, getting the fronts of the beat on the thumb, for instance, in the opening. Right? The thumb, bum, bum, bum. The thumb is always playing on the front of the beat. It's very reliable. It's kind of like a nice handrail as you're going down the stairs. It's something to hold on to. It's reliable. But oh my gosh, what do we do in those places where suddenly the front of the beat is played by the fifth finger on the opposite side of the hand? You have to rotate a little bit, which is just basically open your hand and your arm and lean forward a little bit to have as good traction with your little pinky as you do with your big fat thumb. And this is particularly a problem, I find, for the right hand, fifth finger, back end of measure 10, and then through 11 and 12. These spots. That descending movement by step, F, E, D, C. Practice them by themselves slowly several times in a row, because we don't, it's not only that we want to hear those notes with good clarity from that little pinky, but also, at least for me, I wanted to have as much of a singing quality as possible. Imagine that we didn't have all those 16th notes. We just had that F, E, D, C as a half note, right? And how would you play those to give them a singing quality? Right? As opposed to not being careful with our fifth finger and getting this, where it's like a, okay, I think the diamond is there, but it's awfully small. It needs a lot of polishing, right? Especially when we're not careful, what we get is bottom heavy playing. So not only do we have to lighten up the left hand so that it's not crashing and bumbling itself down there, but we also have to work particularly hard in our fifth finger so that we hear those notes, because as I was showing you in this reduction, there's a lot of movement by step over the long term. This is something Bach does all over the place. and it happens in spades here in this one. Singing is a great way to reinforce in the ear some of these key structural notes, this movement by step. And on each of those, you can apply a little extra TLC, tender loving care, from your upper arm and your back muscles, you know, at a slow tempo. And then after you go around the track many times doing that, maybe sometimes counting out loud or using your metronome, or perhaps, I don't know, more singing and whatnot, then you go back up and play it as written. We hear ba da da da. Oh my gosh, and then it's like the stars are twinkling, right? It's just so delicious. I love this piece. I also have to point out this beautiful spot, measure 5, starting at 5, which when I did this reduction, you notice I was listening for the long-term motion by step in the right hand. That's measure 5 to 8. And I think that is fundamentally the structure. And that's what I shared with you in that short. But as I've been practicing this more and more, I'm finding as well, this is the beauty of Bach, there's so many different avenues to take in terms of voicing, that the notes that are in the lowest 16th notes of that right hand part are really particularly lovely as well. So measure 5, starting with the C, la, la, la. C, C, Re, A, La, F, G, G, F, C, C, which sets us up very nicely for D, you can go any number of ways. And, people say, how do you know which notes to pick? Well, I don't, but what I do find is just, it's like someone said recently, Bach is like a Where's Waldo book, right? You're after you do so many, whatever, maybe a Rubik's Cube, perhaps. I was never good at those. But whatever, like a puzzle in a way. And the more you do them, like a word search versus a crossword puzzle, it uses different parts of your brain. But the more you do them, the more you figure out where to look. And if you just have in your mind, there are going to be notes moving by step over the long term, then just look for them in the repeated passages. Right? C, D, E, F. If you want, I suppose you could listen for the F. G, A kind of thing in the bottom of the hand. But personally, I think the top is more interesting. It's also going to the tonic, what guides my ear very much. So whether you want to call it tonic or dominant or not, 1, scale degree 1, scale degree 5, these notes are very important in this music. And so I'm notes that are moving by step and leading to a tonic are particularly like grabbing my attention. So these are all things on my radar. As well, we got this little, it's almost like a mini cadenza at the end of the piece, 13 and 14. Right? And all of that and what comes after that, in that final bar, I like to have that very meaty and full and robust and substantial. So to enhance that, I have to find places to offset it with some more lightness of touch. Otherwise, it's all robust and like it's just too much. I need variety. So the passage leading up to that at 10, 11, and 12, I find is a nice place to kind of lighten up my touch. Especially when you're listening for that long-term descending motion by step. And being able to play light in the key like that, ironically, comes from practicing very deep into the key. And for me, I find forte staccato works very well. This kind of thing, over and over again. Absolutely. Yeah. You do need to be mindful of, even with all of this voicing, you have to be mindful of balance so that we don't get heavy thumbs like at measure 5. Like if you're going to voice and bring out those notes in the thumb, then you have to not just play the note louder, which is what students tend to do. And I guess that's the first step. But like go beyond that and try to make it an aesthetically pleasing sound. Not just play it louder. Yeah, we'll hear it if it's louder, but it won't necessarily be pleasing to the ear. And that's where the voice comes in. You don't have to be a great singer, but just singing, breathing, matching the pitch. And then you find when you're going to run out of breath, and that will impact how you will phrase it. We got the 16th rests on the beginnings of the strong beats there in measure 11 and 12. Woo. If I show you head on what I'm doing, there's a lot of opening and closing of the hand and the wrist functioning kind of like a hinge. It almost looks like I'm waving, right? It's that wrist. The hand is following the wrist, is what I'm trying to say. The wrist is driving the bus. What is the phrase I like to use? Where the wrist goes, the hand follows. So we have descending movement by step there as well. That's that spot we mentioned earlier. The left hand, 16ths, end of 8 and 9. You can break those up whenever you have 16th notes. Practice them in very small groups, 4 to 5 notes at least, if not smaller. So here's 5 notes, middle of 8. I'm approaching from above with that toss of the hand, that rocking front and back, and then the next beat, which is on a weak beat, 2, 3, 4. Those ascending broken 4-note chords in my left hand, I'm doing like a sad face, kind of, with my wrist, and my arm is following. It's assertive. I don't want to use I'm tempted to use the word aggressive, but no, but very, very assertive. Like, put some into it. Yeah, and then the ending. I think what's most essential to listen for there are the top notes. And the bottom we have. To me, that's a little bit more accompanimental, perhaps. So if you know that it's the top voice you want to hear more, then when you're practicing slowly, angle or tilt your hand and lean in, open your arm away from the body a little bit, lean forward, so that that's the part of the hand that's being helped by the rest of the body, so that we do hear those top notes. That kind of thing. And one other point here is that I tend to also find that it's very useful, though not so much up to speed in the finished performance, although a hair of it perhaps. But when you're practicing this slowly, I find that what really helps to get even more relaxation and natural arm weight that's controlled without being just like literally dead weight falling is to do a little bit of separation of the hands, like the pianists from the late 19th century, early 20th century used to do, like Paderewski, Ignaz Friedman, Chordal, all these great pianists. I love their playing. Asynchronization of the hands. Most people today, they turn their nose up at it. They find it's too self-indulgent. I think a little of it is very effective. It helps to project the tops. But regardless of that, at a slow tempo, it helps you to get even more relaxation of the hands. So just thinking left, right, left, right, left, right, instead of playing them absolutely together. If I do a little bit of that practice, you can hear, right? Left, right, left, right. Sounds a little bit like the drunk pianist. But it really helps to promote natural arm weight and relaxation, if you feel good when you play that way. And then as you speed it up and get the thing ready for the stage, so to speak, you remove that, or at least 99.9% of it, and it feels really good, and you get more singing quality. And now what I want to show you is an overhead view of my hands, playing this piece not as I would in the finished product, that'll be coming in a later video shortly, but at a moderate tempo, without all my excessive movements, because as someone told me once, and they're totally correct, in my overhead videos, it's often hard to see exactly what fingering I'm using. And this is because I do move a lot. As well, I do a lot of finger substitutions, where I play with a finger and then substitute to another finger, doing it on the fly in very fast passage work kind of pieces, as well as a lot of sliding front and back on the keys like this. And these are all techniques that I would recommend for you too. Constant motion of the hand and body, finger substitutions, all of these things, the rocking, all of it. But it does make for it a little bit hard to see exactly what finger is being used. So in this overhead, you'll see a tame performance of my hands only, and hopefully you'll be able to see what's going on. Of course, fingering is very, very personal, and I even get nervous about sharing it because it's just not good pedagogy to spoon feed fingerings to students. But I always think back to some lessons I had. I had so many great teachers along the way, but I remember some lessons with one teacher in particular, and I was working with him on Ondine from Gaspard de la Nuit, and there was a passage there where he just threw this fingering at me. He wrote it in my book, and I tried it. I was like, whoa, it's like it unlocked doors. So if I can do that here and there for someone else, hand in hand with the focus on the principles of good fingering, not literally giving fingering, but good principles, which is the substitution and always moving and preparing for what's to come. This is how we choose our fingers based on the notes that are coming up, always trying for efficiency of movements and to minimize the amount of distance traveled, so that we can create vibrant, individualistic, expressive, communicative playing. There, that's my little soap dish. Not my soap dish, my soapbox. Soap dish. Yeah. So take what you will from this fingering. I hope it's helpful, and you can certainly leave me some questions in the comments, and we'll swing by for a farewell after this overhead view. And that completes this tutorial for the Little Prelude in F major. It's a great little piece. If you're working on it, bon voyage to you on your piano. Thank you for watching. Stay well, stay safe. Happy practicing to you, and we'll see you again soon for more performances and explorations of Bach's music. Take care. Bye-bye.